So what's going on, guys? DIY Dan here again, and in this video I'm going to be installing some new tie downs to hold down my sand cars and RZR in my enclosed trailers that I own. I was really thinking about going with the E-Track style of tire tie down in order to hold these. However, the one thing I didn't like about these is they stick up above the floor, which makes them an easy trip hazard. Now the ones that are specially made as wheel chocks and tie downs especially stick up. But even the regular E-Track rack itself is going to stick up above the floor about a ½ inch. Whereas the ones that I put in are sticking up less than a ¼ inch above the floor. The other thing I really liked about the tie downs that I purchased off of Amazon is that they do come with a backer plate to put under the trailer for added strength. The main reason I didn't want any type of a trip hazard in either one of my enclosed trailers because they are multi-use trailers. We use these to go kayaking and paddleboarding. I've also used these trailers to help people move, which is a pain in the ass in the first place. So if you're moving furniture and then you trip, it's going to make a bad situation worse. Not to mention the fact that if you're trying to move furniture and you've got these things sticking out of the floor, they could get in the way. So those are the main reasons that I wanted these tie downs as recessed in the floor as possible. Now, being as though I have enclosed trailers, I only decided to strap down the rear tires. If my trailer was an open flatbed trailer instead of enclosed, I would be strapping all 4 tires down instead of just the 2 for safety reasons. Now, I have gone on a couple trips with only strapping down the rear tires and it hasn't moved at all on me. If it does end up moving on me for whatever reason, I can always add some more and strap the front down as well. This is by far the easiest way I've ever found in order to strap down this little Coyote car I have or the RZR. And in my personal opinion, if it's a pain in the ass to do, you're not going to want to do it as much. So everything needs to be as easy as possible when it's dealing with these vehicles. The only downside I can see with using these recessed tie downs instead of the wheel chock style of tie downs that are come with the E-Track is that you can't necessarily feel when you're in the right place. Now on my 2 trailers, it's not a big deal because I know exactly where I'm at, just because of the way I am in the trailer. But this is something to consider depending on the trailer you have and how easily you can see out the side to see where you're at. And I'm going to show you how easy it was to install these type of tie downs in your trailer floor. So let's get to it. So I've installed probably around 20 of these style of tie downs in different trailers, 12 of which were for this specific purpose that I'm going over in this video, which is tire tie downs on 2 of my trailers. And I used the best footage that I took for each step of this process in this video. So if you see a little different color floor or a trailer that looks a little different, that's the reason why. So I've got my RZR in my little enclosed trailer, and this is basically used to haul my RZR or my little Coyote car. So right here, I'm just checking to make sure the RZR is centered in the trailer so I can put my markings at where these tie downs need to be. Once verifying I was centered and that I had the RZR up to the front of the trailer, I just set that tie down in place upside down so I could mark the holes. I basically made it and just eyeballed it where the strap would come straight up from the back of the tire, and the same thing with the front. I did go under the trailer to make sure it didn't look like there was any cross beams that I might hit for those tie downs. Now, if the trailer you're anchoring to is angle iron underneath and you can hit the flat part of that angle iron with those holes for the tie down, that's actually making it stronger than just going through the wood. However, I didn't have this option because both of my trailers used rectangular tubing underneath for the cross beams. Once verifying I was good, I started up my RZR and removed it from the trailer so I could start anchoring these tie downs in. If any of those cross beams in the trailer look like they might be close to where you're wanting to put a tie down, I recommend using a small drill bit at first, drill out one of those holes, then go underneath and see if that cross beam is going to be a problem. That way you can figure out whether you might need to move these tie downs or move the RZR UTV forward or back a little bit to compensate for that. So the first couple of tie downs that I did in my small trailer, I actually started out by using the larger size drill bit that was the same size as the bolt. What happened to me more than once doing it this way is the drill bit did walk on me a little bit. Then what I realized when doing some of the other tie downs, that if I started out with a small pilot bit, I was able to stay much more centered directly where my markings were, and then I went ahead and put the big bit on and finished drilling them out to that size. That worked a lot better than trying to start and stay centered with the big bit to start. Now that could have been due to the fact that my big bit was a little bit worn out, but it is always easier to start and keep a smaller bit centered to begin with anyways. Now, being as though these tie downs did come with these backer plates, you could just do this circle cutout for the area you need to cut out to recess that tie down in the floor. I'm going to show you the way I did it, which I just think took out a little bit less material out of the trailer floor, in turn making a stronger tie down. Now, when using a jigsaw in order to cut out this material, that's only going to work if you're planning on cutting all the way through your floor. In my case, my floor was 1.5 inches thick, and I didn't want to remove 1.5 inches of material when I only need to recess that tie down in 3/4 inch. Because once again, the more material you take out of the floor of the trailer, the less strength you're going to have for that tie down. So what I ended up doing was just using a Mountain Dew carton in order to cut out a template right around the exact amount of material I needed to remove for that tie down. Then I set that in place over the holes I drilled and stuck a couple screwdrivers through that so I could mark out that pattern in the trailer floor. So real quick, I'm going to explain why my floor of my enclosed trailer is 1.5 inches thick. I let one of my buddies borrow it, and he actually ended up puncturing 2 holes through the original 3/4 inch thick floor. Instead of ripping out that flooring, I decided just to add an extra layer of 3/4 inch plywood to that floor for added strength, and that is the reason why it's that thick. So once again, I didn't want to have to remove 1.5 inch thick flooring when I only need to recess that tie down in 3/4 inch. So the concept I'm going to show you that I used on my 1.5 inch floor, even though it was 2 pieces of plywood, will work for you if your floor is 2x6s or 2x4s. So right here, I just used my drill to go around the outer perimeter of that pattern and give me some breakaway points. Then I used my oscillating tool with a pretty aggressive blade on it to start removing that material and connecting the dots basically. The first couple of tie downs I did like this, I only drilled out like 4 holes. Then I realized the more breakaways I had in place using the drill bit, the easier and faster this went. I basically went around and cut the pattern out as best I could, going down what I thought was the first 3/4 inch piece of plywood. Then I would break that out using a flathead screwdriver. I would set the tie down in place, and if I wasn't quite deep enough, I would just go with the oscillating tool again and cut out a little bit more material and snap it out piece by piece until I got to the depth I needed so that that tie down was completely flush. So when I was cutting this out, I did keep it a little bit on the small side to start, and then I'd set that tie down in place, look where the tie down was hitting, and then take little by little out. So I only would take the minimal amount of material out of the trailer as possible. When cutting out the area for the tie down, you do need to make sure that it's not tight on the hinge part of that tie down, because that could make it a little bit more difficult once you tighten it down for that hinge to flip up and down nicely. Once removing enough of the floor material so the tie down set nicely in the floor, I went ahead and set it in place and grabbed a couple of the carriage bolts that came with the kit and started setting them in place. However, a couple of my holes were a little bit off, so I put the ones in that I could, then took my big drill bit, wallered out the holes a little bit for the other 2, and then went ahead and put those carriage bolts in place. Something I realized while editing this video is it might be easier just to start by drilling 2 holes diagonally across from each other. This gives you still a good spot to put your pattern in place to mark it out, get the hole cut. Then go ahead and put the tie down in place with the 2 bolts that you've already drilled. That holds that tie down nice and tight in place. Then go ahead and drill the final 2 holes, ensuring that they are lined up properly. Because out of the 12 tie downs that I put in place for this project, I had to go back and waller out about 4 of those tie downs in order to make all 4 bolts fit. Now, being as though it was just me doing this project and I needed a way to hold those carriage bolts down in place so I could go underneath the trailer and tighten them down, I just set a heavy paver on top of those carriage bolts to hold them in place while I did that. Then I got under the trailer and put the backer plate in place. Now you'll notice this backer plate isn't necessarily a perfect square, and that's so you can move it around and adjust it depending on how close you are to cross members. So I thought this was a really good design idea for the manufacturer of these tie downs. I put the lock washers in place and started the nylon nuts and went ahead and tightened those nuts down. As far as the ratchet straps go, I used 2-inch heavy-duty ratchet straps. You can get these things off of Amazon. I actually got mine from Cal Ranch. They were on sale from like 20 bucks down to 12 bucks a piece. You can also pick them up at Lowe's or Home Depot. Now, because these ratchet straps were 27 foot when I bought them, and I just didn't want all that extra material laying around the trailer, I actually put these around the tire, left myself a couple feet of extra, and then cut them, and then I used a mini torch in order to melt out the edges of that strap so they wouldn't start fraying out. The rest of this video is going to be the installation of another one of these tie downs in my bigger enclosed trailer. And while this video clip is playing, I'm going to go over some other helpful concepts and tips that might help you out if you're thinking of putting a similar tie down system in one of your trailers. So as I mentioned earlier with the first install, drilling more holes around that circle before cutting it out made it much faster to work around that and cut out that material without hanging up as bad. Something else to think about is the direction you actually install the tie downs in your trailer. And I actually didn't think of the idea of the direction I installed them until after I already put the first set in and was putting in the second set. So right here, you'll notice the first set of these tie downs I put in place. I'm removing the strap, and you'll notice that the way I have that tie down installed, that's actually going to act as a wheel chock if I don't remember to flip that down, which is exactly what happened to me. By putting the tie down in the other way, if I do forget to flip that down, the tire is going to knock it down for me as I remove the vehicle from the trailer. So there is a good and bad thing about putting your tie down in this way, especially if it's at the back of the trailer, because these tie downs are only meant to pull one direction. Now for this application, it's not a big deal because both of them are basically pulling straight up, so it doesn't really matter. However, these are not meant to be overextended against the hinge. Now this isn't going to damage that hinge if you're using a 1-inch strap when you don't have much leverage, but when you're using 2-inch straps that you can get pretty good leverage on, this can mess up the hinge, therefore messing up the tie down. Now in my bigger enclosed trailer, I only added a 1/2-inch piece of OSB board to the top of the pre-existing 3/4 inch plywood that was in the trailer. So right here you notice that I actually cut through that 1/2-inch OSB, and then I had to notch out a little bit more of the 3/4 inch plywood that was underneath it in order to get that tie down flush to the floor. Now that oscillating tool worked amazing in order to remove that material, but if you absolutely have to, you could theoretically use a hammer and a screwdriver or a hammer and a chisel to get that material out if you're not wanting to cut through your entire floor. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and it gave you some good information. If I do have any updates as far as something not holding or something breaking out, anything like that, I will do an update video to let you guys know what happened. If you did like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. The whole concept of my channel is to give you guys the most information in the least amount of time as possible so I don't waste your time. And I hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Later.